No doubt. You've been through the breakup of a relationship at some point in your life. Maybe you're going through that now. Emotions kind of run the gamut, and it's easy to lose confidence and become doubtful about your relationship future. Our guest today endured a breakup, but she used it as a growth process after her own relationship ended. Author and counselor Rebekah Freedom McClaskey developed and practiced a series of small step-by-step actions that ultimately helped her heal her heart and live in peace with her destiny. Rebekah Freedom McClaskey is the author of Breakup, Rehab, Creating the Love You Want. Rebekah, doing these interviews, probably seems like pulling the scab off an old wound over and over, but I gotta ask, what was it about your own relationship or your experiences that just pushed you to say, you know, I gotta write this book?
Oh gosh, I don't know that any good artist can really answer that question, except to say that we're all gifted with the talent, and writing is mine. And so, and I am very much like Taylor Swift in that I write about my breakups. They're my muses.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's just the general atmosphere that something like that creates. Well, anyway, that's that's a good answer, Rebekah. When they're growing up, girls tend to make relationships an important part of their lives, whether it's inborn or through conditioning. And what was your childhood like? Any kind of input that was good or bad about relationships in general?
Oh, we'll just go deep right away.
Okay.
No dinner, no movie.
No. We cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll just cut to the chase.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I had a screwed up childhood. My parents fought all the time, and I grew up. Actually, I was born in Bible school, and that was right after all the hippies. My parents were very much hippies, acid doing, cocaine sniffing people that found Jesus in the 80s, and then after that happened, I was born. So they've been together about a decade by the time I came along, and Italian mother, full Italian, born in Italy, and my dad was German and Irish, and so that was just a pretty common combination. They met in South Dakota, and they were just, pistols.
Oh yeah, I know. I have. Yes. I have an Italian mother, and it was loud, and hands were moving, and advice was flying all around the room, and as a little kid, you kind of, which way do I go here? What's going on? Yeah, I get that. Anything in your childhood or otherwise that gave you any indication that you might be moving toward helping people with healing their relationships?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I recently kind of learned, I went to a healer, and she pulled sort of my life path card, and she said, your life path is to learn partnership. I was like, wow, by screwing them all up? like doing terribly with them? Because I clearly have a lot more lessons to learn before I stick the landing on this. So certainly, growing up with fighting parents, my dad, he was sort of absentee. He was off cheating on my mom all the time. And my mom was angry all the time. And just, sort of, I was her scapegoat for that. So that creates quite a storm. But in the midst of that, there was also being raised in the Bible, being raised in church, and then being raised with my dad as a chiropractor and a hypnotist. So I got really interested in the esoteric things by like age 8. And that led me down the path of becoming a counselor.
Yeah, I'm just curious, you were raised in that religious atmosphere, and of course, in a household like that, you're going to get the indoctrination. Was there any undoing of that kind of stuff that you had to go through? It seems like you'd have to undo that stuff before you get to your destiny.
Absolutely. I'm so thankful for my Christian foundation. Like, it certainly has carried me in my really trying, challenging times. Like, where could I go but to the Lord? And my dad, after he pastored for a while, left the church, and he started studying Carlos Castaneda and Rudolf Steiner, Casey. And so I was raised in a very alternative household. He wasn't like a Bible thumper. He was also like a motorcycle guy and just sort of a rebel. So I had quite a menagerie, quite a colorful upbringing. So I didn't have to like deprogram myself. I was exposed to a lot.
And just as a disclaimer, we're not bagging on any particular religion. Just had to bring that up, as part of the process here. You have a list of 12 steps in the book, Breakup, Rehab, and the first would seem to me like one of the toughest: let go and forgive. And when we talk about relationships at a time of breakup, how do we start the let go and forgive process?
God, well, life has been kind enough to give me a breakup to remember how horrible they are. So that happened 2 months ago. So my answer has changed in every sort of podcast I've done. And today, I would say the let go and forgive is extremely hard if you continue to focus on the breakup or the past relationship. But the minute you switch into service or learning something completely different, like learn about like ficus, learn about how grass grows, learn about like, engines or whatever, it really makes letting go a lot easier. Like where you put your focus actually expedites the process of letting go. Now, forgiveness is something that will be a lifelong journey because we're all doing the best we can with the information we have at the time. And sometimes we just simply do not have the skill set to pick a person or be with somebody who wants the same things we want. And so therefore a breakup happens.
And just to be clear, we're not saying forgive and condone any terrible things that were done to you. The forgiveness is different. I guess you're forgiving yourself in a way too.
That's the most important thing. Like, it's just about saying, you know what, I tried. And ultimately, it sucks when you're left with a lesson instead of like getting what you actually wanted. But sometimes learning that lesson is going to be so crucial in you getting what you actually want. Does that make sense? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And compassion comes into play too, which is different. How does that figure in getting over a breakup?
There's just a moment that you kind of look at the person across the aisle that you were with for however long, and you just kind of are like, hey, me too. We all have to go our own way. We have to walk the path before us. And a lot of people, that means sometimes staying together and really grinding it out and working it out together. And sometimes it just becomes, there's just a moment where you're like, fundamentally at our core, we don't want the same things. And so you are compassionate to say, like, I really have to be responsible for my own life and to let the other person do the same.
It's understandable that you wouldn't have a lot of trust when you've been burned in a relationship. Is there a starting point as a counselor that you might suggest to help someone regain trust after they were hurt so badly?
Well, I'm learning to, as far as trust goes, I'm going to kind of give a complicated explanation and then distill it down.
All right.
So first of all, you have to trust that life is so much bigger than your heartbreak. And I mean in the respect that when we go through a heartbreak, it is so central to who we are as human beings, surviving, coupling up. It gives us purpose and meaning oftentimes to be in a relationship and even more so to be parents, right? There's a lot of purpose and meaning in that. And you just give your whole life over to it. You trust it implicitly. You say, this is worth my time and I'm going to invest in it. And when it falls apart, you feel befuddled, betrayed, lost,
Oh, yeah.
all of those things. So trust really begins ends with saying, like, I wanted that so badly and it failed me and I feel like I failed, but to be like, life is so much bigger than this event. There's so much more to experience than just this one person, just this one moment in time. Like, have I been to the Taj Mahal? Have I been to Hong Kong? Have I traveled the world? Have I eaten all the food I want to eat? What experiences are left to have? And then you trust yourself that you can still have those experiences.
And you remind me of something that, well, you take me back just a minute ago when you mentioned service. I think the thread here is that we're getting out of ourselves. And when you mention service, I'm thinking maybe something just as simple as giving your time to a cause outside of yourself.
I mean, I'm absolutely in the different programs I have on my website, the 12-week detox and the 6 weeks to heal a healed heart. Like, that's something I'm so emphatically weaving into it. Is there's a volunteermatch.com, which pairs you up to different nonprofits in your site or places that need volunteering. And so the sooner you can go, like, help an elderly person or help pets or help a historic site or, go clean up the beach or whatever it is, the sooner you can do that, like, immediately after your breakup, just be like, what can I volunteer for? It completely changes the energy of things.
Well, around here, we're fond of speaking of the authentic self. The genuine self is what we call it, but it's I think pretty much the same thing as you mentioned in the second step of the breakup rehab, and that's trust your authentic self. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so there's a part of you that knows that you're going to get through this, right? That there's a place. I really use the phrase that God can dream a bigger dream for me. So you can say the universe has my back, or spirit is working through me. Whatever phrase you really want to use as your mantra, that is the same. It's likened to saying trust your authentic self. That there's something bigger unfolding here than maybe what you expected. And I just want to say, for us controlling types, i.e. Italians,
okay.
really hard. It's not
memories.
Like, it's like impossible. You're like, I always control everything.
Oh yeah.
You're my husband.
Yeah.
I dated you 1 hour. We're clearly getting married. Like, I have a plan. Please sign on the dotted line.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, to be patient, also to be patient with the unfolding, to really slow down and take your time to get to know the person that you're, falling in love with is part of trusting your authentic self. You just trust yourself that you're going to be okay if you go slow.
Yeah. And I think, and you've mentioned in the book, you have disciplines that you're fond of. I think yoga is one of them. It seems that a yoga practice could also be very helpful here.
Yeah, yoga, and the thing about it is, like, I really noticed how complicated my mind will try to make something. It's like, you got to get up and go to the gym, and you got to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you literally have to roll out of bed in your underwear or naked, if you sleep naked or whatever, like, and you just stretch. It's not, but, when you're really depressed, when you're really sad, or you're full of anxiety, it can feel like impossible to do that, but it's really as simple as, like, stretching your arms over your head and being like, okay, great. Like, yoga doesn't have to be this super complicated event. It's just, it gives you a chance to be in your body.
When I was growing up and watching and hearing about relationships, I always heard the phrase, well, as long as you're happy. And yet I saw a lot of people who seemed to be happy while they were in relationships that really weren't the healthiest. Should happiness be the goal when we start out on a relationship?
I wish. Don't you wish that, like, romantic relationship was just like the cure for, like, world peace?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That'd be amazing. feeling?
Oh,
Like, oh, we found our person.
Down and dirty, quick.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I'm not gonna have any problems anymore. And we treat it like that, right? We treat it like I'll find my person. There'll be no more problems. It'll be great. We'll be happy. But yet, so happiness is a great goal, but keep in mind with any goal, once you achieve it, there's something else still. So I would say that if you're really gonna want to try to give yourself any grace in this process of relating, getting together, coupling, breaking up, all of that is growth. Have growth be like your kind of central focus.
You mentioned in the book that there's a role of destiny, or destiny plays in our relationships. If you can, break this down for us as to how much is fate and how much we can control.
You know, I was in this sort of, because I'm a psychic, I'm an intuitive, whatever that means. I just have extra sensory perception, which is, it's terrible to date me. It's horrible. Because I see things that's coming, but I still get blindsided by being broken up with. It's like this weird dichotomy. But when it comes to destiny, when I was writing the book, what I was really kind of seeing and is channeling is there is a greater force. There's sort of like this, our bodies, if you think of our bodies as a blueprint in where we're born geographically and the socioeconomic status we're born into and the parents we have, that is all sort of a blueprint for our destiny, right? Like as a white female, I'm going to be treated just societally different than a different race. Given, you know, where I am culturally in the country. So that's a form of destiny. Like your body's a blueprint of destiny. Now, what you do with it, like how you decide what choices you make, if you choose to go to school, not go to school, the places you put yourself will totally influence how your destiny unfolds. So does that make sense? Like your body is the blueprint of destiny, and your mind, your psyche, your willpower, the inspiration inside of you is sort of like the engine of destiny.
Yeah. The word compromise comes up a lot in relationships. We have to compromise. How much should we compromise in a relationship? Is there, I mean, obviously there's a cutoff point, but how do you know you're doing, you know, enough compensating or too much compensating? What's the gauge on that?
As far as the compromising, I want to kind of just tie it into the destiny thing and just simply say, and I say this in the book, and this is a good mantra, you cannot lose out on what is meant for you, and you cannot hold on to what is not, no matter how much kicking and screaming you do, right? You simply, and some people really go to extremes to try to hold on to what they want. So when it comes to compromising, I would fold that phrase and that thought process in as well, is we can lose ourselves in relationships trying to hold on to something that's just simply a lesson that has expired. And I know this because, like, I have a very, going back to my early childhood pattern, my dad would leave all the time, and I felt very much responsible for him coming back, being like the oldest child, and being like, if I'm good enough, then dad will come back. So oftentimes when I am in relationships, I find myself over-compromising my integrity, what I actually want. So the simple answer to this question is set your boundaries, know what you want, and hold to them.
The word intimacy to me means, well, I compare it to a meal, an Italian family meal. It takes all evening. You enjoy every facet of it. You savor it. It's not something you do quickly. It's not necessarily just physical, just a taste matter. There's a whole series of experiences there. And to me, intimacy is more than just, well, what kind of sex do you like? Or it always goes back to sex from oftentimes, not always, but I mean, a lot of times people will say, oh, I know you want this. You want me to swing from a trapeze, or you want me to, no. Intimacy means, yeah. Well, what does it, let me ask you, what does intimacy mean to you?
Can I swear on your show?
I think we sent the censors out for the day, so go right ahead.
Yeah. Intimacy is sort of being scared shitless, but figuring it out anyway. Because there's this deep part of us that longs to be seen and witnessed for who we truly are, and being in relationships oftentimes shines a light on that part of us. So intimacy is like being able to go through the discovery process of who we are in this lifetime, our personality traits, our strengths, our weaknesses, our buried parts in our subconscious, and your partner oftentimes will reflect those strengths and weaknesses back to you. So intimacy, I think, is the most purifying, most challenging, most rewarding process of like love and connection.
Very good. Very good. How do you feel about, and they've launched a million sitcoms on this, but how do you feel about non-committal relationships, sort of the friends with benefits type of stuff?
Well, I'm a slut in recovery, so I think they're terrible. Like, honestly, I've hurt my heart so many times just doing that kind of short-term relationship. It's just like anybody eating fast food for their primary meal. Your heart rate's going to go up, your cholesterol, it's not going to be good for you. So I just think, as old school as that sounds, because people want to be sexually expressive, there's some people wired for that. I'm not one of them. I really think that monogamy and commitment and is a higher path. A lot of people want to sell me on polyamory as like this evolved way of being in a relationship where you can have multiple partners, but I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think being committed to another human being and really working through life together is way better than these throwaway relationships that we get ourselves into.
I agree. I really agree. You have a private practice. What are the biggest challenges you find your clients have when they deal with getting into or staying in a relationship?
Well, I guess one of the biggest challenges is our societal upbringing. The very kind of idea of, there's two different challenges right now. One, there's still the old ideal of what it means to be feminine and to be a woman, and there's the old ideal of what it means to be a man, stoic and strong and a protector, provider with not a lot of emotions, and females are supposed to be sex objects, basically, and sort of fulfill this particular role. So we're confused about our roles, and then in addition, we've added a lot of fluidity on top of that, gender fluidity, sex fluidity. So a lot of people we're just don't know our ass from our elbow. We're just so confused about how to connect.
And what has that change and all that turbulent societal stuff, what is that doing to the definition of cheating, if anything?
That's a really great question. Again, polyamory, I think, is just a very sophisticated way of saying, there's a lot we can learn from the polyamory community, in that they really emphasize open communication, honest communication, sort of freedom of expression. I think all of those are beautiful things. But ultimately, we're responsible for our own boundaries and picking people that are safe, that are emotionally safe, emotionally available to be around. So honestly, when it comes to cheating, it's kind of uncontrollable. it's an uncontrollable factor. Like you could try to get with somebody, you hope they're faithful to you, and if they're not, then you have to really respect that boundary violation and figure out how you want to move forward after it happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that authentic self coming out. You've got it. That's your anchor, and you have your way, and people are going to do what they do. I guess there's really you can't rehabilitate people.
But we don't come with like blueprint. We don't come with our bodies are the blueprints of destiny, but we don't come with like a guarantee, like 90-day trial, and if this doesn't work out for you, it's like ultimately biology has women getting attached immediately. The minute we kiss a guy, we're sort of attached, and it takes guys typically anywhere between 1 month to 2 months because of their testosterone to become emotionally attached to a woman. I don't necessarily know who designed that. I think that maybe we should go back to the drawing board. But there's just that factor that the male body is wired different than the female body, and therefore the behaviors, how we cope with life, is gonna look very different.
Mm-hmm. What do you most hope readers are going to take away from this book, Breakup, Rehab?
Well, I hope to take away buying lots of coffees. No, I'm just kidding. I hope they take away that there are steps to be able to get through a breakup. It can really seem just so devastating, insurmountable. Like all you want to do is just get back together with that person, or if you left them, all you want to do is have them leave you alone so you can move forward. And the difference between Breakup, Rehab and a lot of other books out there is that I include humor, I include a bunch of tools for people to use, like academic skill sets, some spirituality, and just a really, easy read so that people can have everything at their fingertips to move forward. So in the simple answer to your question is, what do I want them to take away from it is freedom, the ability to set themselves free.
Where will we find your website?
My website is RebekahFreedom.com. That's REBEKAH freedom.com.
And the book is Breakup, Rehab, Create the Love You Want, from Rebekah Freedom McClaskey. Rebekah, that's it for my questioning. Thanks for doing the interview today, for writing the book, and for your willingness to lay out your own personal life in the process. Very refreshing, and we all appreciate it. Come back and talk with us again, please.
For sure. Thank you so much for your time. My pleasure.